US dollar losing its power? Is it the end of the petrodollar? Well, since the end of World War I, the US dollar has become the world's global reserve currency. And in this chart, you can see the history of global reserve currencies. Now, since 1970s, you have commodities like crude oil and gold being traded in US dollars. But that may be set to change, as we have been seeing that now some commodities like oil have been traded in the Chinese yuan instead. So perhaps there may be more people starting to use Chinese yuan or even some other type of currency. We have BRICs nations also planning to come up with their own currency, and perhaps there may be a rise in the use of digital currencies like Bitcoin as well. So we expect to see a lot of changes in politics and economics, and we'll be diving deeper into the topic of de-dollarization in this video. So if you like topics about finance, investing, economics, and politics, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm Jessica Sin. I talk about all this stuff, and I hope you learn something out of it for your investments. So why is the US dollar losing its power and dominance in the global economic and political landscape? Well, first of all, inflation. So changes in the US monetary policy affects interest rates, inflation, and also the value of the US dollar. So what the Central Bank of the United States, the Federal Reserve, has been doing across the past decade from the 2010 until the 2020s is that they have been printing a lot of money. So as the increase of the US dollar, more money in the economy, it goes up, then people have more money floating in the economy, so they demand more goods and services, and this pushes the prices of goods and services upwards. So you have inflation. And of course, it is also caused by supply disruptions due to COVID-19. And then we have the Russia-Ukraine war, which also caused the price of commodities to shoot up due to disruptions in supply as well. So the US is dealing with record high inflation not seen since the 1970s. So it is really something that the US Federal Reserve will have to deal with, and they have been increasing interest rates to combat inflation. But the thing is, inflation is still deeply rooted within the US economy, and so long as there is inflation, it will reduce the value of the US dollar, because inflation is the concept whereby things are becoming more expensive. What you can buy with $1 today, you will need more than $1 to buy in the next year if inflation is positive. So you will need more money to buy the same amount of goods and services just to maintain the same level of living standards if there is inflation. So inflation is reducing the value of US dollar. And the Federal Reserve is now trying to balance between inflation and unemployment, whether increasing interest rates can bring down inflation, but a lot of people are fearful that it may lead to a recession. So if inflation keeps on persisting, then that would hurt the value of the US dollar. So we will have to keep watch on the next Federal Reserve's action as well, and to how the US economy may be performing. And also, recently we also had the bank failures, right? In March 2023, we had Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank collapsing. Now, this has caused the confidence in US banks to drop, right? People are losing faith in banks. Banks are supposed to store your money and keep it safe until you want to take out your deposits, right? But if banks can fail, then that means that your money in the banks, it is not safe, right? So if we look at the 2008, we had the global financial crisis. So at that time, you had banks like Lehman Brothers collapsing, and a lot of banks went into a lot of financial troubles, but some banks were being bailed out. And will there be a domino effect whereby more banks will fail because the effect of one bank collapsing can spill over to another bank, which can spill over to another bank? So when will this actually end? So perhaps a few more months later, there may be news of another bank collapsing again. Who knows, right? So people's faith in the financial system in US has been decreasing. So that is why also another reason that people are losing confidence in the US dollar. And a lot of people are switching to digital currencies like Bitcoin instead. So that is why in March you saw that there was a plunge in the value of banking stocks, but the Bitcoin's price rose quite significantly, more than 50% gain within a month because of what happened. In fact, we saw that downloads of banking apps decreased while the number of downloads of crypto exchange and wallet apps increased. So people are actually flocking to cryptocurrencies as an alternative to the traditional banking system, because Bitcoin was actually introduced in 2009 as an alternative to banks in the wake of the financial crisis in 2008, right? So when people lost confidence in banks, people need to seek safety in other assets. So traditionally, gold has been seen as a safe haven asset. So during times like war, like financial crisis, people will buy gold. But now in modern times, we have people also flocking to Bitcoin instead, which is seen as an alternative. And people are calling it digital gold as well. So cryptocurrencies are actually decentralized, right? Decentralized meaning that it cannot be controlled by any single entity. It cannot be controlled by the government. It cannot be controlled by the central bank or even any other private banks. So this is why it can be seen as a good alternative to the banking system, right? So if you're looking to invest in crypto or trade crypto, do check out Bybit platform. The link is in the description section below. I'll be also teaching beginners on how to buy and sell crypto. If you have the patience to hold for at least 1 to 2 years or more, then you can consider dollar cost averaging. Start buying a bit of Bitcoin while it is still at a discounted price, and try to manage your risk by dollar cost averaging. Now, if you want more analysis on what might happen in the short term and what are the potential price targets to watch, then you can join my paid Telegram group where I'll be sharing more of my analysis and also market updates. And we also have to talk about international trade, which is really important to the whole global economic system, right? So the US dollar has been used in the trade of commodities globally, right? We see crude oil and gold being traded in USD. But since Russia invaded Ukraine, US imposed a lot of international trade sanctions on Russia. Then Russia's de facto reserve currency has changed to the Chinese yuan instead. So it has been using Chinese yuan to do its, international trade transactions. And recently we also saw in March 2023 that China completed its first liquid natural gas trade with a French company using Chinese yuan as settlement currency instead of the US dollar. And this transaction involved around 65,000 tons of LNG imported from the UAE. So this is a very significant transaction because such a huge transaction has been carried out in a currency other than the traditional US dollar. So we see that if more and more countries start to use other currencies to purchase commodities instead, then the US dollar is really losing its dominance. For Russia, Vladimir Putin has already revealed that 2/3 of the country's bilateral trade with China and Russia is already conducted in the ruble and renminbi. Putin said that it is important that our national currencies are increasingly used in bilateral trade. And we support using Chinese yuan in transactions between Russia Federation and its partners in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. So Kenya has announced that they will be purchasing Persian Gulf oil using their own currency instead of USD. And then China, the world's most populous country, and Brazil, the world's sixth most populous country, also announced that they had come to an agreement to trade with each other using their local currencies, the Chinese yuan and the Brazilian real. So the China's media network, CGTN, reported that the deal will enable China, the world's second largest economy, and Brazil, the biggest economy in Latin America, to conduct their massive trade and financial transactions directly exchanging yuan for reals and vice versa, instead of going through the dollar. And it is noted that China is Brazil's biggest trading partner, whereby in 2022, the two countries did more than 100.5 billion US dollars worth of trade. Now, other than China, Russia, and Brazil, these three large countries, we also have countries in Southeast Asia that are also de-dollarizing. The finance ministers and governors of the central banks of the member states of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, they met in Indonesia on March 28, 2023, and according to ASEAN briefing, at the top of their agenda were discussions to reduce dependence on the US dollar, euro, yen, and British pound from financial transactions, and move to settlements in local currencies instead. So will that be a big economic shift, or has it already started? Are the BRICs nations taking over? Let us look at this chart. So here you can see the top blue line, which represents the combined economies of G7 nations as a share of global GDP in purchasing parity terms. Now, the G7 nations include developed countries like Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, and US. And then we have the bottom green line, which shows the combined economies of the BRICs countries, which include Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. So if you can see, the G7 economies have been losing their economic dominance to the BRICs countries, right? You see that the developed countries have been contributing less to global GDP compared to the leading emerging countries. So we see that the emerging countries, the BRICs nations, have actually been contributing more to global production and international trade. And what is important to note is that the BRICs nations have been talking about coming up with their own currency to replace the US dollar in international trade. So whether it will be backed by commodities like gold or other commodities, not sure, but it may likely be gold, as Russia and Iran have also been talking about developing a gold-backed stablecoin. It may also be other digital currencies in the future, because as we see, a lot of countries are coming out with their own digital currencies, which they might be using in international trade. Who knows which currency will become the new reserve currency in the world? But can be seen from all this that this poses a threat to the US dollar. So will de-dollarization worsen, and what are the impacts on your investments? So if the US dollar does indeed lose value, like some have predicted it may happen, the US dollar may collapse completely, then any investments denominated in the US dollar will likely be affected. So this can have serious implications on your portfolio if indeed de-dollarization worsens. So what else can you invest in? What do you think? Will de-dollarization worsen? Will the USD lose its global dominance? And what other currency or asset will replace it? What are your thoughts? Leave your comments in the comment section below, and also connect with me on social media and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more investing info. Alright, see you in my next video.